Welcome back, everybody. I'm Matt Hernandez, and today we're going to talk about lighting team portraits inside. All right, so most of you know my specialty is sports photography, portraits specifically. I do take some action shots, but that's not my bread and butter. It's teaming individuals and then individual portrait sessions. So I get asked about lighting constantly because that is my specialty, is off-camera lighting. And group pictures is one thing that I don't cover as much because it's harder. I don't do it in my workshops or I haven't to this point, because it's hard to get a group of kids that are willing to sit around for like 2 hours and pose the same way for everybody to take pictures of them for me to and hear me ramble on and explain things. So it's kind of hard to get that information out just because there's so many people involved. And that's a very good point, actually, because coaches typically hate picture day for a reason, and that's because it's interrupting their practice schedule, number one, so they're not getting better, and that's what they're there for. And some of them see it as pointless, some of them get it, understand why it's good, but either way, nobody likes it. And so you want to get in there and get it done and get out as quickly as possible with little to no problems, which is easier said than done sometimes, but it can be very overwhelming whenever you have 30 teenage girls or teenage boys running around and, they're not being controlled by their coaches. Hopefully they are, normally they are, but every now and then you have some that don't help. And it's just like chaos. So you got to be able to control them, number one, but you got to have a plan and know what you're doing. So having a system for lighting is very important, especially inside. I feel like that it's a little bit more hectic inside because you're in a contained area. So it's also more challenging because when you're inside, you get less light. So it's harder to light them. When you're outside, if it's sunny especially, then you can use the sun as a backlight. It's going to help you with filling in shadows and everything else, even if you're using off-camera flash. So I do light both situations differently, outside and inside. They're the same principles, but I use different equipment. So we're going to talk about inside today. So I've got behind the scenes from this year's 2024 McCracken County volleyball shoot. I thought it was a perfect example because there are times when I might not use as many as 4 lights. I typically do, but this is a good one just because it's in a wide open gym and there's not a ton of girls in the pictures, and there's also not like 5. There's a good, maybe 12 or so. Let's go ahead and take a look at one of these. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10, which is a good amount. You get less than that, it's a little bit easier. More than that, it can be harder because you got to move your lights back. Sometimes you have to have more lights. So this is the end product. We have a Polar Pro blue morph, something like that. Lens filter on here, getting those edge lights to make those little flares on the sides, which are pretty cool. Because normally you'd add those in post and you can do them in camera, and then they're up here on the top of the ceiling lights a little bit too. And then also here's one shot without it, so I had both versions. These are both in camera. No, there's no retouching done whatsoever, but you can see what we're going for here. We've got rim light on each side, and then we've got the lens filter also, but then we've got nice soft light lighting the girls also. That's a little bit harder outside. I've done a video on that. If you want to see that, we will link that also, so you can go check that out because it is a little bit different. Same principle, is just different equipment basically. So, and different problems basically too. So, okay, so here, we are using 4 lights. We use 4 lights outside too, but we use those as the main lights. Here, we're using 2 edge lights and 2 main lights. So anytime you have a big group, bigger than like 3 or 4, an umbrella is gonna be good. And when you have like 5 or 6 or more, then you're gonna maybe need 2 because you're gonna have fall off. Umbrellas are really nice. The 7-foot umbrellas that I use from Westcott are really nice soft light, but they do have fall off. So if you put one umbrella in the middle here, the girls on the edges are probably gonna be a little bit darker. I actually had somebody that messaged me on Instagram not that long ago asking about that, and they showed me the picture, and that's exactly what happened. They had one umbrella when they had just enough people in the picture. They needed 2. So let's look at some of the behind the scenes so you guys can get an idea of how I lit this. Okay, so we've got my camera on my tripod, which I think I shot this with the Sony A7R5, and then I've got 4 Westcott FJ400s. We've got 2 C-stands for the key lights here with 2 7-foot Westcott umbrellas with silver interior. And I use silver because it gives a little bit higher output. And then we've got the diffusion sock that you have to buy separately on both of the umbrellas. So they're up and angled down, probably not quite 45 degrees. I don't know exactly how much they're tilted, but they are tilted a little bit. They're not flat. And the key is with umbrellas, there's no deflector plate or anything like a beauty dish, so that the light's not gonna spread. It's gonna spread out, but there's gonna be a hot spot in the middle. The further you pull it back, the less of a hot spot there's gonna be, the more even the light's gonna be. So you have to be careful with that. But you have to be aware, the diffusion is gonna spread out the light a little bit too and help with that. But that's what causes the hot spot and the fall off on the edges is when you just have one, that's what you're gonna get. So we've got two side by side to get a little bit more even. Now you're still gonna be a little bit brighter in the middle and have some fall off, but it's not gonna be nearly as exaggerated. So we've got those, and we want the light coming, we don't want it hitting here, we want it hitting like around their face, because if there is a hot spot, we don't want this part to be brighter, we want their face to be brighter, because you want to look at their faces first, right? So I always ask the client, if the rod is angled towards you, if it came out right now, and because they see it sticking out of the light, where would it hit you? And then they can see like where it would go to, and that tells me if it's hitting here, I need to raise it up a little bit, or maybe not so tilt, make it not tilt quite so much. So you can also see my edge lights. I've got two edge lights, deep focus reflectors. Now these are about 45 degrees, and they are pulled back just far enough that they are gonna be out of frame. I like to have a little bit of flare on the edges, and when you have those lens filters that I talked about from Polar Pro, which we'll link also. I'm not an affiliate with them or anything, but I do love their products. They're awesome. I have their ND filters. I want to get one of their polarizers, and then I've got their blue and gold morphic filters and their mist filter, which I use all the time. They're really, really awesome. I highly recommend them. Okay, so when you have your edge lights and you've got them just out of frame like that, then you're gonna get a little bit of flare, and especially when you add those filters, it's gonna give a pretty cool look. So I've got my wide angle lens, my 24-70, I'm all the way out at 24. Now this is the part that's not very like technical or scientific, I guess. I don't really have like a system for measuring specifically, other than I take 5 steps from my umbrella, or from my camera's the umbrellas are generally at the camera, sometimes they move. So from the camera to the subject, that's 5 steps, 5 normal steps. With a group this big or smaller, it's gonna be good. You might get a little bit closer if it's smaller. A bigger group, you're gonna have to scoot back, obviously, but I want those lights just out of frame. So you need to move them back enough so that they don't light the side of the face. So I have an edge light here, and if I scoot back, you can see it'll start to hit me like on the side of the nose. And when you that's not necessarily flattering, number one, for girls, but also, or for guys either. But what happens is when you have a line of people and you have lights that aren't back far enough, then you're gonna start to get shadows, because the light's gonna hit the girl on the end. It's not gonna hit the other girl. It might hit her a little bit, but it might cut off the light right here and have a weird shadow on her. So you have to pull them back far enough that they're gonna hit them in the back and still edge light them. So that is the key. And they've also got to be powerful enough. So they're typically gonna be on full power. These two main lights with the umbrellas are generally gonna be between 6 and 7 each, because there's 2 of them, so I don't have to turn them up as much because they're closer. All right, now you can light meter those, obviously. I don't use a light meter. I kind of know what my settings are gonna be because I've been doing this for so long, but it's not a bad idea. I've thought about buying one, honestly, recently, just to make things a little bit faster in situations that I don't know exactly what I need to start at. But I've shot in this gym like 1,000 times, so I pretty much know what my settings are gonna be. So here's one view. They're a little bit angled here, and we're just getting ready. They're kind of being goofy, that's funny. I don't even remember that because I'm focused on what I'm doing. Okay, so you see I'm posing them. So I've got 2 rows and I'm staggering them so they're in the windows. I've got the taller girls in the back, taller in the middle on both rows, and then shorter on the edges. And I let them angle whichever way they want, make sure their hair's nice and straight. And then I give balls to whoever wants it, basically. And then I try to even it out so it doesn't look too lopsided. And I have them all posed differently. That's generally how I approach it. Here's one from upstairs, angled down where you can see everything really good from a little bit higher vantage point there. And then this one really shows you where the edge lights are. So they're basically underneath those side basketball goals, pretty much even with the free throw line. I think that's actually what I lined them up with. Just out of bounds here on the basketball court, so just enough so where it's out of frame, where I can't see the light with the camera, because if the camera can see the light, then there's gonna be flare. So the closer it is to the view in the lens, the more flare there's gonna be. Now there's still gonna be some when it's out of frame like that, just out of frame, but I kind of want that, like I said. Plus you have to know that if you move it back further, you're gonna lose a little bit of power. And I could have put them upstairs too, that would work. I've done that before, but down low looks pretty good too. So we've got them raised up to where they're higher than the girls, but angled down so that they're right at them. You don't want to angle them down too much because they'll hit the ground. So you can see these rods, they would come straight at their faces right there. So it's going to light here and then fall off, which is exactly what you want. And we're going to have nice even light with both those umbrellas. All right, so I showed you this one, both versions with and without that Morphic filter. Here's the cheerleaders. So this is at half court. This is also a half court, but it's the opposite, or they're turned 45 degrees. So we go back. I don't have a behind the scenes from that one, but the cheerleaders are angled. They're angled this way on the M. But it's lit exactly the same way, and you can see here the lights are just out. You see a little bit of flare. Now this one I just used the mist filter. So the mist filter, you can see the lights are glowing a little bit. There's no streaks, but they are. It makes sure anything that's a light like that, it's gonna add flare. It's a little bit of flare to it, make it look really cool. It also can soften skin too. So here's the boys soccer team, which we actually shot this indoors, and then I composited in the background. I put a sky behind them. So this isn't the same picture, but it's the same day and this is the JV. So the varsity looked exactly like this. I just photoshopped out the white lines and then cut them out and put that sky behind them. So that's an option that you can use if you're in a situation like this, which I think that looks pretty good. And I actually delivered these like that with the LED lights behind them like that in the black background, because I think it looks great. But the varsity team's got banners that hang at the field, so I thought that because it is soccer played outside, I thought that this was more appropriate for those. So, and you don't have to go to that extent, but it is always an option. So I typically shoot these. Now this is a bigger team, obviously. This would have been a good one to have behind the scenes from. Unfortunately, we don't. But so I had everything moved back a little bit more for this. The two main lights were pulled back and the edge lights were pulled back. So I had to shoot probably at a little bit higher ISO, at least a stop, I would say, because you want to make sure that you get enough light. And if you're backing things up, then you're going to lose power, obviously. Now the main lights can be turned up because they were at 6 or 7, but the edge lights are already at 9. So they're at full power on the FJ400. So you're going to have to figure out a way to make that work. And you can see that you can still see that edge light on everybody. And it's just enough to make it look good. If it was a stop darker, it wouldn't show up. So you have to make sure that you get that right. Always start from the back forward. So take an ambient shot, then turn your edge lights on, then turn your main lights on. Okay, then get the edge lights first, and then turn the main lights on together, just to make sure the edge lights are powerful enough. So typically with groups, so we've got 3 rows in this one. This would probably be best at like F11 because you want more depth of field. You want everything to be in focus, all the kids to be in focus. So I would typically focus on the back person. That way everybody in front would be in focus. You could go at F8 because when you shoot wide angle, because I'm at 24 millimeters with this without even looking, I know that I am because there's so many kids. When you shoot wide like that, there's not that much difference between like F2.8 and F5.6. There is a little bit. Now they would be a little bit blurry, the kids in the front at 2.8 obviously, or even 5.6. 5.6 might be okay, but that would be a little bit soft. F8 to F9 to F11, F11 for sure, everybody's going to be pretty sharp. F8 it might be kind of borderline depending, but you want to make sure you get everybody in focus. So you want to do that. And then your shutter speed, it's kind of determined by how much ambient you want to show. Inside, I want it to be as dark as possible so it was easier to cut them out. So I wanted to underexpose, and it's not totally dark, but it's close. So I maxed everything out basically here. With the volleyball pictures inside, it would be hard. It's a little bit harder to do that because the floor is bright. It's not green turf, it's bright wood grain. So it's a little bit harder to underexpose, but you can still see. I love that look where you make not the sky, but the ceiling dark and then the lights show, especially if they've got cool like round LEDs like this. It looks really neat. That can be a really cool graphic element in your picture too. So make sure you have the lights on and then make sure they're going to look cool, but normally they do. Even if they aren't cool LED lights like this, a lot of times they still look neat. So yeah, you can shoot on the ground if you want. You have to be aware of your angles. Usually on a tripod, 1 or 2 feet up is good because that gives you a little bit more of an eye level view because girls don't like shots from down low a lot of times, so you got to watch that. But it makes them look heroic, so you want to kind of find a happy medium. But if you stand up, it's not going to look as good. That's going to be too straight on. It's going to make them look shorter, and because you're going to be shooting down wide angle, and it's just not a good angle. It's not a heroic angle for athletes. You want to be a little bit low just to make them look big and dominating. So that's what I try to do. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much my philosophy for team pictures. without getting too overly technical, but my style really isn't overly technical. I make sure that I have my settings right and that I know what I'm doing, but I go by feel more than anything. So, you know, you've got to make sure that I want to look at the back of the camera and know that that looks exactly how I want it. You can be technically right and your picture not be the way you want it. So you got to keep that in mind too. You want to be creative and you want to have fun with it, but you got to have your settings right, obviously. But, you know, as you can see, I'm not overly technical with like my spacing, and like I think it's, like I said, it's 5 steps from the camera to the subject when I do a group picture like this, which is kind of crazy, but you know, but it works, and it works almost every single time. And except for like with soccer, that wouldn't have worked because that would be too close. So just keep that in mind. So, but we'll link all the products that I use because that's the stuff that I use every day. So we'll link all that in the description below. FJ400s, light stands, deep focus reflectors, and some 7-foot umbrellas. If you've got that and a tripod and a wide angle lens with your camera, then you should be good to go to create pictures like this. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope that was helpful. If you did, I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell so you get notified when we post new content. There's going to be a lot more to come. We'll see you next time.